The Galactic Interspecies Academy stood as a monument to unity, its crystalline spires reaching toward the violet sky of Nexar Prime. Within its halls, species from across the galaxy studied together, learning the delicate art of coexistence. Yet some barriers the instructors believed could never truly be crossed. Lena had heard the warnings on her first day. The Krethians, apex predators from a death world where survival meant constant vigilance, were enrolled in separate combat training programs. Their young, called cubs despite being nearly adolescent, possessed reflexes that could accidentally harm softer species. Humans were advised to maintain distance, but Lena had never been good at following such advice. She'd been crossing the recreation quad when she saw it, a small rubber sphere rolling across the polished stone, abandoned near the Krethian training grounds. The facility's rules were strict about leaving equipment unattended. Being helpful by nature, Lena picked up the ball and approached the fence separating the training area from the common grounds. On the other side, a young Krethian sat alone, his spotted fur bristling with agitation. His amber eyes tracked the ball in her hand with an intensity that might have frightened most students. This was Tavi, she'd later learn, the smallest of his cohort, often overlooked during formation drills. "This yours?" Lena called out, holding up the ball. Tavi's ear flaps twitched. He made no move toward her, clearly confused by the human's casual approach. Predator cubs were taught from birth that other species feared them, respected them from a distance. This small, fragile-looking creature showed neither fear nor deference. Lena shrugged and tossed the ball over the fence. What happened next would be discussed in xenopsychology classes for years to come. Tavi's instincts took over. He leaped, twisted midair, and caught the ball in his jaws with a precision that demonstrated exactly why Krethians dominated their homeworld's food chain. But instead of returning to his solitary corner, he dropped the ball and stared at Lena. Then he pushed the ball back under the fence. Lena grinned. "Oh, you want to play?" For the next hour they played. Lena would throw, Tavi would catch and return. Sometimes he'd pounce on it, shaking his head side to side in a display that would terrify most species. But Lena saw what others missed, the universal language of play, the same joy a puppy on Earth showed with a tennis ball. Other cubs eventually noticed. They gathered at the fence, watching in fascination as their smallest member engaged with the alien. Some growled warnings, concerned about protocol, but Tavi ignored them, focused entirely on the game. When the session bell rang, Lena waved goodbye. "See you around, Spots." Tavi's translator collar crackled with an approximation of his native vocalization, something between a purr and a chirp that meant contentment. The next morning, Instructor Velcros prepared his combat training class as always. The Krethian cubs assembled in perfect formation, their military discipline instilled from their earliest days. Today's lesson would focus on pack tactics and synchronized strikes. "Begin formation Delta," Velcros commanded, his own predatory features stern with authority. The cubs moved, all except one. Tavi broke formation and trotted directly toward the fence line. Where Lena sat under a tree studying her datapad, he settled beside the barrier, watching her with unwavering attention. "Tavi, return to formation." Velcros's voice carried the alpha tone that demanded obedience. Tavi's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Velcros approached, intending to physically retrieve the wayward cub. But something unprecedented occurred. 3 other cubs broke formation and joined Tavi at the fence. Then 5 more. Within moments, half the class sat watching the human girl who'd shown them kindness. Lena looked up from her studies, surprised to find an audience. She waved awkwardly. Hi?" The cubs' tails began to wag, a sign of excitement in Krethian body language. "This is unacceptable." Velcros roared, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. In all his years of instruction, he'd never witnessed such unified defiance. The cubs weren't being aggressive or rebellious in the traditional sense. They were simply choosing. Lena stood and walked to the fence, concern crossing her features. "Is something wrong?" "I didn't mean to disturb your class." Tavi pressed against the barrier, making that same purr-chirp sound. The other cubs mimicked him. Velcros observed the scene with growing understanding. These cubs had been raised in a culture of strength and isolation, taught that their nature made them separate from other species. But this human had done something no protocol or procedure had managed. She'd treated Tavi not as a dangerous predator or a political entity. but as a person who might enjoy a simple game. You, Velcros addressed Lena, his tone shifting from authoritative to curious. What is your name? Lena, sir. I'm in the xenobiology program. And you played with Tavi yesterday? Yes, sir. Just tossed a ball around. I hope that wasn't against any rules. No rules were broken, Velcros interrupted. He studied the formation of cubs, all now oriented toward this human rather than their instructor. A slow, rumbling sound emerged from his chest, Crethean laughter. Tell me, Lena of Earth, how would you feel about assisting with today's lesson? Lena blinked. I'm not trained in combat tactics. Perhaps not. But you understand something we've failed to teach, that strength need not mean isolation. Velcros opened the gate. Come, show us more of these human games. As Lena entered the training grounds, Tavi immediately bounded to her side, followed by his cohort. The other instructors who'd gathered to witness the disturbance watched in amazement as the fiercest young predators in the academy played with a human as though she were part of their pack. Word spread quickly through the academy. By week's end, the rigid barriers between species began to soften. Other students, emboldened by Lena's example, started to interact across the traditional boundaries. The Crethean cubs became ambassadors of a new possibility, that those who seemed most dangerous could also be the most loyal friends. Tavi never left Lena's side during recreational hours. Where she studied, he rested nearby. Where she walked, he followed. And when other students asked Lena how she'd tamed a predator, she would smile and shake her head. I didn't tame anyone, she'd explain. I just tossed a ball to someone who wanted to play. It was, the academy would eventually conclude, the most human thing she could have done.